Welcome to LONGEVIX Wellness. I'm truly glad you're here. For the next few moments, I invite you to slow down, to listen not just with your mind, but with a quiet curiosity about your own body, because what we're about to explore is not just about food, but about communication. The subtle language between what we eat and how we function. There is a remarkable intelligence within the human body, a system so intricate that even the smallest molecules can influence how we feel, think, and age. Among these molecules, hormones act as messengers, chemical signals that travel through the bloodstream, coordinating processes that sustain life. Estrogen is one of the most influential of these messengers. Often associated primarily with female biology, it is, in reality, essential for both men and women. It supports bone health, brain function, cardiovascular stability, and reproductive systems. But like all-powerful systems, its strength lies in balance, and balance, in the modern world, is not always easy to maintain. Today, we explore a topic that is often misunderstood, oversimplified, and sometimes even sensationalized: the top 5 foods that may contribute to elevated estrogen levels in the body when consumed excessively or without awareness. This is not a call to fear food, but an invitation to understand it more deeply. Let us begin with soy-based products, perhaps the most debated category in this conversation. Soy contains natural compounds known as phytoestrogens, specifically isoflavones. These molecules have a structure similar enough to human estrogen that they combine to estrogen receptors in the body. But here is where nuance matters. They are not identical, and their effects are significantly weaker. In traditional diets, where soy is consumed in fermented forms like miso, tempeh, or natto, these compounds often behave in a balanced and sometimes even protective way. However, the modern food environment has transformed soy into something quite different. Highly processed soy derivatives, soy protein isolates, textured vegetable proteins, and hidden soy additives are now embedded in countless packaged foods. When consumed in high quantities, especially in these refined forms, they may overstimulate estrogen receptors or disrupt the body's natural signaling patterns. It is not soy itself that raises concern, but the scale, processing, and frequency with which it is consumed. Now, let us move to dairy products, a staple in many diets across the world. Milk is, biologically speaking, a growth-promoting fluid. It contains not only nutrients but also hormones estrogen, progesterone, and growth factors, particularly when sourced from cows that are pregnant, which is common in industrial dairy production. While the human digestive system can process these hormones, regular and high intake may contribute to the body's overall hormonal load. Think about how often dairy appears in daily life: milk in tea, cheese in meals, yogurt as a snack. Individually, these may seem harmless, but collectively, they form a pattern. Over time, this pattern may influence the delicate balance of hormones, especially in individuals already sensitive to hormonal fluctuations. This raises a subtle but important question: when we consume another species' biological signals for growth, how do they interact with our own internal rhythms? The third category may seem less obvious: processed meats. At first glance, they appear unrelated to estrogen. But when we look deeper, we find a connection through the concept of endocrine disruption. Processed meats often contain preservatives like nitrates, as well as residues from animal feed, antibiotics, and environmental contaminants. Some of these compounds can interfere with the endocrine system, the network responsible for hormone production and regulation. They may not act like estrogen directly, but they can alter how hormones are synthesized, metabolized, or eliminated. This indirect influence can lead to a condition often referred to as estrogen dominance, where estrogen activity outweighs other hormones. It is a reminder that hormonal balance is not just about what mimics estrogen, but also about what disrupts the systems that regulate it. Now we come to refined sugars and ultra-processed carbohydrates, perhaps the most pervasive elements of the modern diet. Their connection to estrogen lies within metabolism. When we consume high amounts of sugar, the body responds with increased insulin production. Over time, chronically elevated insulin levels can stimulate the activity of an enzyme called aromatase, which converts androgens such as testosterone into estrogen. This means that a diet high in sugar does not just affect weight or energy levels. It can actively shift hormonal balance. It is a profound example of how interconnected the body's systems are. Blood sugar regulation is not isolated, it is deeply tied to hormonal health, inflammation, and long-term well-being. Finally, we arrive at alcohol, a substance often overlooked in discussions of hormones. Alcohol has a direct impact on estrogen levels in two key ways. First, it affects the liver, the organ responsible for breaking down and eliminating excess hormones. When alcohol is consumed regularly, the liver's capacity to perform this function is reduced. As a result, estrogen may accumulate in the bloodstream. Second, alcohol itself has been shown to increase estrogen production. This dual effect, reduced clearance and increased synthesis, creates a scenario where even moderate but consistent consumption can gradually elevate estrogen levels over time. It is not about occasional indulgence, but about patterns, repeated behaviors that shape the body's internal environment. As we reflect on these 5 categories: processed soy, conventional dairy, processed meats, refined sugars, and alcohol, a larger picture begins to emerge. The issue is not any single food, but the cumulative effect of dietary patterns shaped by convenience, industrial processing, and disconnection from natural sources. But here is where we must be careful. Knowledge, when misunderstood, can lead to fear. And fear is not a sustainable guide for health. The body is not fragile, it is adaptive, resilient, and constantly seeking equilibrium. Occasional consumption of these foods is unlikely to cause harm in a healthy individual. The concern arises when they become the foundation of daily eating habits, when they replace whole, nutrient-dense foods, and when they are consumed without awareness. So instead of asking, "What must I eliminate?" perhaps we can ask a more empowering question: what patterns am I reinforcing, and how do they align with the body's natural design? Because the opposite of disruption is not restriction, it is support. Whole foods, vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, seeds, and minimally processed grains offer more than just nutrition. They provide fiber, which helps bind and eliminate excess estrogen through the digestive system. They contain antioxidants that protect cells from oxidative stress. They support liver function, enabling the body to metabolize hormones efficiently. In this way, the conversation shifts. It becomes less about avoiding high estrogen foods and more about cultivating a dietary environment that allows the body to regulate itself naturally. There is also a deeper, almost philosophical dimension to this. Food is not just biochemical, it is cultural, emotional, and social. It connects us to traditions, to memories, to comfort. Changing how we eat is not simply a matter of knowledge. It is a process of awareness and adaptation. This is why extreme diets often fail. They ignore the human experience behind eating. A more sustainable approach is one of gradual change. Small, consistent shifts. Choosing whole foods more often. Becoming aware of hidden ingredients. Listening to how the body responds not just immediately, but over time. Because ultimately, hormones are not enemies to be controlled, they are signals to be understood. Estrogen, like all hormones, is part of a dynamic system. It rises and falls, responds and adapts. When we support the body with balanced nutrition, adequate sleep, movement, and reduced stress, hormonal harmony becomes not something we force, but something that emerges. So as you leave this moment and return to your daily life, I invite you to carry this awareness with you, not as a rigid set of rules, but as a lens through which you can observe your choices. Notice what you eat. Notice how often. Notice patterns that repeat. And gently, without judgment, begin to align those patterns with the quiet intelligence of your own body. Thank you for spending this time with LONGEVIX Wellness. If you found this valuable, take a moment to subscribe and continue this journey toward deeper understanding and lasting health.